Okay, so we can start streaming. 1 second.
What was your take on Missouri?
Okay, that was Amon Amarth with Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath. And to comment today on the elections from yesterday, we have the Reverend, the bloodiest Sabbath man that we can get, Mr. Alex Ioannidis. How you doing, man?
I'm good, man. How you doing?
Pretty good, pretty good. I have to admit, some of these elections are pretty damn boring. But of course, when people freak out over a simple special election in Ohio, there's plenty of laughs to be had. So, what exactly are the big issues that you found going into yesterday? Because I personally thought that it was a whole lot of nothing.
No, I saw a lot of great candidates win across the country that give me hope. I liked Josh Hawley in Missouri. I liked John James in Michigan. Um, Ohio cracks me up because if Balderson had lost and the Democrat had won, uh, we'd be hearing about how everybody hates Trump and the Democrats are winning big. And yet, even when Balderson wins, we hear the same thing from the media. It just kind of discredits them. Uh, yes, I was excited about some of the people that got nominated to respective positions. Another cool thing I saw was the guy who failed to prosecute Darren Wilson after the Michael Brown shooting. Uh, he got defeated. He was the top prosecutor in St. Louis County. That was on a more local level. So
Wait, so I don't understand. Why was that such a big thing? This was the guy that failed to prosecute him, or this is the guy
he
that did?
didn't go after Darren Wilson.
Well, how could he go after him? I mean, what would be the grounds?
It's what people were angry about. That was a very controversial case, and he really didn't do much to even look into it or investigate. So,
Yeah, well, the Justice Department kind of did an investigation. They couldn't find any grounds to investigate him.
mm-hmm. Well, there were complete conflicting reports, and uh, I guess the people there felt he should have done more. I mean, nobody knows what happened with the Michael Brown case, but it was really sad that a young man lost his life like that. So, in the end,
Um,
he lost. That's just a headline. So,
yeah, but I think like if you really think about that, where that kind of shows, I don't care if people take this the wrong way because there's no other way to say it. And okay, so what you're talking about is that people are pissed off that that guy didn't prosecute Darren Wilson, who's a cop, for
mm-hmm.
shooting Michael Brown, but the investigation by Obama's Department of Justice found that he didn't violate anybody's civil rights. So, people are complaining about that, yet Marilyn Mosby, who was the Baltimore prosecutor who fucked up the prosecution of the Freddie Gray cops, and they ended up going free. She won by a massive margin in Maryland. I think it was like a couple months ago. And people were like, "Oh, she's so brave because she took on the police." She lost the case out of incompetence. I think the judge laughed her out of the trial because she basically screwed everything up. Because as a prosecutor, you're supposed to there's the process of discovery, meaning the defense is allowed to see any evidence that could be exculpatory and exonerate them. So she didn't do that. She kept some evidence away from them. And therefore, the judge ordered a mistrial and said that they couldn't possibly mount a competent defense under those conditions. So they didn't even, I mean, that's really what you're talking about, that people are mad that things didn't go their way. They don't really want justice, is what I'm trying to say. What they really want is to, fuck somebody else over
They
because they
want the
think.
guy's head.
Well, sure, but it's like these people are idiots. Michael Brown. There's no evidence that anybody violated his civil rights. The guy was just a moron.
What
And
if his hands were up and they shot him?
well, what if his hands were up? The evidence doesn't show that. The evidence shows that he was in a scuffle with the officer. So I don't give a fuck what happened.
The evidence doesn't show anything. We just have different eyewitness reports.
No,
That's
the
the
Justice
problem.
Department I don't know how we got onto this, but the Justice Department interviewed all the witnesses. A number of them contradicted their own stories and were disqualified. So this was Eric Holder's Justice Department, and it's not as if Eric Holder is Jeff Sessions. And they
Mm.
disqualified a bunch of those same witnesses as being basically unreliable, especially the guy that was on TV. I forgot his name. I think it was like Andre something. That guy basically proved himself to be not credible as a witness. There were other witnesses that said his hands were not up, and the forensic evidence showed that he was way too close to have been running away when he was shot, which some of the
Well,
witnesses said. So when physical evidence contradicts the witnesses, when witnesses contradict each other, then there's no grounds to prosecute. Either the witnesses against them could get a consistent story, or they couldn't, and that's how you formulate a prosecution. So people can be butthurt all they want, but actual criminals go free every day for the exact same reasons that Darren Wilson did.
um, again, you've heard me defend all sorts of people, and I've always stood by the "you're innocent until proven guilty" idea. And Darren Wilson gets that same benefit. Um, I don't know what happened, and I think really only God and the officer knows what truly transpired that day. And but I'm still more in Michael Brown. It's sad what happened to him. And,
I don't see it that way. I see it as
prosecutor. I don't know if we should or shouldn't.
I see it as this is the life that happens to people that, you know, this when you're a cop, this is what happens. You know, you chose that life, and unfortunately, people have politicized the crime issue. And you know, you go to many of these cities right now that are basically cesspools of failure. You know, just I mean, we have serial killers that have basically gone undetected in my city for years, and nobody ever marched because of that. People really don't give a fuck about that, and that's in the black community. They literally couldn't give a shit about all these women that get basically slaughtered and chopped up, but they'll go after this cop, even though, you know, they assume that so that's basically why I will never care about any of these cases, because in that case, it's always, if you have a bunch of morons that are claiming to be witnesses and they can't get their stories together, then of course the cop is going to go free. Okay, if you can't keep a consistent story together about what happened, then why are you surprised that they go free? And again, like I also brought up the whole case with Marilyn Mosby over in Maryland. So she wanted to screw these cops over, maybe justifiably. I'm not going to say that Freddie Gray deserved to die, because that's kind of a more bizarre situation. I mean, he died in custody. But
she failed her job and got reelected.
Yeah, she did a shitty job, and these Black Lives Matter and other people, all these activists in the Baltimore area, they still reelected her, and she's a joke of a person, and that's basically that's the story of our country. People don't actually want they don't actually reward success. They're happy if you basically pretend that you're helping them, and meanwhile fuck up at your job all the time. And that's basically that's a majority of politicians in cities like that, and that includes my city, by the way.
Again, innocent until proven guilty. I don't know if I would have gone after Darren Wilson. If I were a prosecutor, I would have investigated it somewhere. But I don't know if I would have gone after him.
But if the Justice Department clears him of civil rights violations or anything, what would have been the charge? I mean, you can't call it premeditated murder. You can't call it. I mean, the worst you could have called.
No, you're looking for a murder charge, but you're also looking for the truth. I would have investigated it somewhere. This guy just was very apathetic about it. Bob,
but they did. The Justice Department investigated it. So you think the local cop or sorry, the local prosecutor is going to investigate it better than the entire Department of Justice? So this is the main contradiction, that people nowadays, you know, we know that the Department of Justice is full of idiots too. Mm-hmm. So the question is, which one is more incompetent, the local police department and prosecutor's office, or the police?
Look, I don't know much about the Department of Justice's investigation in that case. So I'm not going to act like an expert on it. But I'll tell you this: if I were a prosecutor in that situation, even a local one, if this happened in my county here in Tennessee, I would at least look into it.
So you would look into that in
that was really rough. Instead of... I think Michael Brown blew up though, because to piggyback off that, racial tensions were starting to boil by that point, and that was more of a tipping point. You said like a lot of people don't care. I think a lot of people do care, and I can't speak for the black community, but I think a lot of them are hurt. They're have issues trusting the police. A lot of them, like a lot of times, they have like Philando Castile complied, and he still ended up getting killed. And that happens from time to time, and it causes a lot of distrust. And Philando Castile happened after this, but incidents like this are rising up, and it's causing anger, it's causing division, and it's
Yeah, they can
causing.
be. I don't care if it causes them to basically, grow acne on their nipples, because the fact of the matter is that if you don't have a consistent story when you're trying to prosecute somebody, an actual, uh, what's it called? An actual basis of proof, then
Sure.
I don't care how people feel. I don't care that Michael Brown, everybody makes it out like this huge tragedy that he was shot by a cop. Listen, I had a friend a year ago that passed away because he overdosed on heroin,
Mhm.
and it was a while. I mean, I wasn't that close to him, so but his family basically they let it wash away. They didn't really care so much that I know, because they'd known that he was like that for years and years. These people knew that Michael Brown was like this. They knew that he behaved like this, and then he gets shot by a cop, and they act like it's basically like some sort of meteor shower that, oh, who could have guessed? It's like, look, I get it that your guy got shot, but all of the evidence suggests that he basically resisted arrest, that he was walking in the middle of the street, and he just basically got into an altercation with a shopkeeper or whatever. Then they make up this bizarre narrative with the whole slogan, "Oh, hands up, don't shoot" or whatever. The Justice Department refutes that in its report. They indicate, due to forensics, that his hands were not up and everything. But nobody ever apologized for saying that. Nobody ever apologized for just kicking Darren Wilson to the curb, because they don't care. They don't care about the actual facts. They don't care about the fact that the witnesses, screwed the story up. The witnesses could not get a consistent story of what happened. So then you want people to, you want the district attorney or the city prosecutor to use resources that could be dedicated towards investigating, car theft, investigating, actual crimes against citizens by citizens on something that's already been investigated by the Justice Department. And that's basically the issue that I have. That people assume that due to the fact that a lot of people are angry, that should mean that somebody should be investigated, and I don't accept that.
Well, I disagree with that part. Again, I agree with you. You can't just say, "Oh, we're angry. Let's throw Darren Wilson in jail." We have to make sure he broke the law first. There's a rule of law here we have to follow. But a prosecutor works for the people, and if that case is very important to said people, it would be a and you work for the people. If they want you to investigate that, you should investigate it. And that's basically what happened. People wanted him to look into this somewhere and do something. And this guy was so apathetic, he got voted out. That's pretty much what happened.
No, you have to be, okay. So you're saying that he should have at least given it a shot,
Yeah.
but this is
And you're not even looking for
St.
different.
Louis has more murders per capita than Chicago does, and you're focused on
Keep in
one
mind,
on one murder that or not, it's not even a murder. It's kind of an officer involved shooting.
keep in mind, this doesn't go under St. Louis's crime statistics. This happened in Ferguson, which is in St. Louis County. So it wouldn't get calculated with the actual city of St.
Still the
Louis.
same metro area, and Ferguson probably has a pretty hard. I mean, let's look at the crime
The middle
stats.
class black area, Ferguson
What?
is. It's
Look, we could
a
keep
middle class
arguing
area.
this again and again, but there was no basis for prosecution even at the time. There was a basis for prosecution in the Freddie Gray case, and they still screwed it up. So, this prosecutor, maybe he did a poor political decision, but there was no basis to prosecute Darren Wilson based on. And by the way, an investigation by a Justice Department team from the Civil Rights Division You don't think that that's more authoritative than a city prosecutor? I mean,
Sure, but if I'm a county prosecutor, I would still look into it if my people wanted me to, and if it meant that much to my community. That's
no, but
that's
your
how I'm
community.
saying.
So you're
People
saying
will.
that the justice system should be at the leisure, not the leisure, but should operate to the demand of the public. Is that correct? That's basically what you're suggesting?
Sort of. I'm suggesting that if the public wants you to investigate a case, you investigate it. I'm not suggesting that you prosecute Darren Wilson if you look into it and find out that that the Justice Department is correct. So, like, if they're sitting there saying find something to convict Darren Wilson for and get him for it, then, like, no, they shouldn't do that. But if they're sitting there saying there is something fishy about this, look into this, find the truth, and if you do find anything, go after it.
No,
That's what I'm
but
saying.
okay. So you take these witnesses that were already discredited by a federal investigation unit. Well, what do you use it for? What's the new basis of evidence? I mean, you tell me. Think about it from a prosecutor's angle. You have witnesses that are documented in the Justice Department report to be not credible. So then what do you use?
I haven't read the Justice Department's report. That's the thing. I don't know.
There were no witnesses that claimed that his hands were up that were deemed credible by the Justice Department Civil Rights Unit. That I remember this. I remember I was in an argument with a woman back in 2015 about this.
I feel like there has to be a witness somewhere, considering the fact that they came up with a whole hands up, don't shoot thing.
It doesn't matter. Yes, they come up with all sorts of shit all the time. I mean, there's people that come up with the whole lizard people thing, but there still has to be a basis of evidence. I've come up with theories, for example, that Christopher Robin from Winnie the Pooh is actually an allegory for somebody taking LSD and having his stuffed animals talking to him, but I still can't prove it.
He is. No, I'm joking. But look, he should. All I'm saying, he didn't look into this like he should have.
No, but somebody did look into this, and basically this is what I'm saying. Okay, have you ever seen the movie JFK?
No, I haven't.
Okay, JFK is a movie. It's not exactly about President Kennedy. It's about the only people that were ever put on trial for his murder. And basically, this attorney, I think his name was William Garrison. I think it was the district attorney for New Orleans.
Mm.
He tried to prosecute this group of weirdos, local weirdos, that were around this gay businessman for putting together a plot to kill President Kennedy.
Mm-hmm.
And it was all based on a bunch of conjecture and things that might have happened, and all these opinions and things that people said about this guy and whatever. And there was never even a shred of evidence against any of the people that were involved. And I think some of the people involved were already dead by the time the trial happened. And the judge basically, I think the concluding scene was that the judge basically threw it out of court and said, this is the dumbest case I've ever seen, because there was zero proof. None of the witnesses were credible. And, some of them I think were even, they didn't. First of all, when you have a witness that's a criminal, you can actually really discredit them very easily. So some of the witnesses that were to the side of Michael Brown in that case, saying that his hands were up, already had criminal records, and they couldn't keep their stories straight anyway. So who are you supposed? You call people to the stand, and they say, hey, Mr. Thompson, did you see this guy? It's the same thing that happened in the Trayvon Martin case. They called a witness to the stand, and she said that Trayvon Martin had said to her on the phone that she saw that he was being stalked by a cracker-ass cracker.
No, Trayvon was different. Zimmerman admitted to following him in the 911 call after the 911 operator told him not to. That was a whole different story.
No, I remember her witness testimony. She said that Trayvon Martin had said to her that he was being followed by a creepy-ass cracker. Do you think that plays well to a jury?
I don't know.
No, it doesn't play well to the jury.
He was being followed. Sure, why wouldn't it?
What do you mean? Look, I'm trying to tell you that witness credibility is a big issue. Okay, when you have people that have a criminal record, going before a jury and trying to testify against a police officer, and they can't keep their story straight. Okay, they can't actually articulate what happened, and they contradict each other. One witness contradicts the other. One person will say, for example, that the person, let's say, this is hypothetical, this isn't the Brown case, but when he was shot, he was running away, and one person says he was running to the side, and so then it's contradictory testimony. You can't convict the guy because the stories aren't straight.
On here, you said?
I'm talking Michael. I'm talking. This is more like the Michael Brown case.
Okay.
So when you're a prosecutor, when you want to basically put somebody in jail, you can't have a bunch of people saying things that contradict each other. Otherwise, your case falls apart. The defense makes you look like a fool. Anyway, Mr. Wazo is asking. I thought this stream was to recap last night's election. So sorry about that.
Yeah, we should get back on.
I don't know how we got into
that. Was really what I was trying to drive. The people were upset. They voted the guy out.
Yeah, so Mr. Wazo,
the case was very tricky, and I don't really know how I feel about it. I just know that it sucks what happened to Michael Brown. That's what I believe it.
Basically, what happened for Mr. Wazo was the prosecutor from the Darren Wilson case was voted out yesterday. So, we have Larry Gerke here. We have DI Freighter Watcher in the audience, Mr. Wazo. Who else is here?
What do people from the audience think? Do they think there's a blue wave or a red wave coming or anything like that?
You guys can put it in the chat. What do you think?
You think there's one? That's really what I wanted to bring up, because they're saying a blue wave is on the way. And
you're asking me if there's going to be a blue wave, or you're asking the audience?
Yeah, I mean, anyone's opinion.
I don't think that there's going to be a blue wave at all. I think it's pretty much a bunch of bullshit.
I agree with you. For two reasons. Trump is really good at motivating his base to vote, which is evident, and his base isn't really fatigued. He has spun it to where they're mad at the current incumbent people in Congress, and they're wanting to go out and vote to make sure President Trump can get his people appointed. And you're seeing candidate after candidate that Trump endorses winning elections, and you're seeing it happen. So
we have Freight Watcher is from Michigan. He says we had a primary yesterday. So I'll ask him, what was his impression? Was he interested in that race for governor with Abdul El-Sayed, who came? He made like 35%, which is a respectable showing. This
first
is
governor he would have been.
Yes, he was Egyptian American, and I thought, I give people, a lot of people criticize him, Muslim, whatever, which I think, people can dislike it. I think he, in the interviews I saw with him, he seemed like an intelligent candidate, and he seemed like he was very focused on of course, the progressive cause in Michigan, also especially implementing some sort of universal health care and everything. I think that it was a very, it was a very well put together effort, but it was unfortunately for them. And I do pay attention a lot. I'm not progressive. I'm more of a libertarian / conservative, but more libertarian. I would say that the progressives had a pretty big setback yesterday. I don't think it's, I don't know how many more primaries there are. The primary in New York's going to be important.
I would argue that they didn't.
They didn't have what?
A setback.
Well, from what I've heard on the radio, all of the candidates that were endorsed by Sanders that had opponents lost. There was one race in Kansas where his what's that?
James Thompson's one of his people out there who won his primary.
Yeah, but I don't think he was even opposed in his primary, which makes me think, why did they give a shit? He
got 61% of the vote.
Right, and you know what? I think they were expecting him to win because he'd won before.
Yeah, he ran last year in the special election, so he had some name recognition. This is why I would say they did well in Michigan, though. We talk a lot about Abdul El-Sayed, but there is a third candidate running in the Democratic primary who pushed a very similar platform to El-Sayed. and his name was like Shri something. I forgot.
Yes, Sri Thanagar, I think his name
Uh,
was.
but I think the two of them combined got like 49% of the vote, so they did really well. And keep in mind, in the 2016 primary, Hillary Clinton was she was winning. What you call it? She was supposed to win Michigan easily. She was getting like 60 something percent in all the polls, and Bernie Sanders actually beat her by like 1 point. It was very close. That was like the first time people started taking Bernie Sanders seriously. It's like, oh wow, he just totally upset them in Michigan. So
So
there's that.
I have a couple. I haven't read Freight Watchers yet, but I have a reaction from Larry. He says, "Tend to agree, guys, but I wouldn't mind seeing the demos jack stomped. Although Republicans are assholes. I refuse to vote Republican since the assholes who invaded Iraq." And I think that there's a lot of people who are, of course, with the stuff going on with Iran, they're still reluctant to actually vote for a Republican because the Republicans are still dominated by, neocon, military-industrial complex, war
Dying
hawks.
slowly.
What's that?
Trump is killing that.
The issue is who are the people who, what are the industries that are basically fueling the Republican Party? The military industries are among them. They're also, by the way, donating to the Democrats. It's not play games here.
They give money to everyone.
Right, and
and Texas Instruments and Honeywell.
right, and I have a lot of fights. I know a lot of people, of course, in the pro-Israel community that they're like, oh, we have to fucking stay active in both parties so we can have fucking, everybody can, the APAC and whatever. And I'm like, no, 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 no. This is exactly what's fueling these progressive candidates. It's because of your lobbyist groups that have basically made these parties a joke. If we had just more like non-interventionism, if the U.S. was less involved in the Middle East or anywhere, by the way, I think that things would be a lot better because often we screw things up, just like Larry was just saying. He says, on the other hand, I swore off the demo whores in 1980. So he doesn't have anybody to vote for. Larry does. Of course, he lives in California, so it doesn't really matter. But
he has John Cox. It's a pretty solid candidate for governor. I mean, Gavin Newsom is like crazy, completely lunatic, out of his mind, crazy. And John Cox is running John Cox has a long shot chance of winning because he's basing his whole campaign on a gas tax repeal over there, which is pretty unpopular with voters. And he's basically saying to guys, I'm gonna leave like all this polarizing stuff, like what abortion and all of that. He's pro-life, but he's not like making it the forefront of his campaign. He's going out there and saying like, hey, we can do something about these taxes. This gas tax is really unpopular. The cost of living here is nobody can afford who's not in the league. And it's causing, he has a long shot chance of winning. It is California, but like, I don't know.
So I'm hearing DI Freight Watcher says that she says I'm a her. Sorry about that. She also says Abdul Said is okay here. It is he. Oh, he practices Sharia law. She meant, but would govern as a Democrat. Yeah, right. Unfortunately, we will wind up with Chouette for governor. I think that the Republicans might lose to the woman who got nominated.
I think Gretchen Whitmer wins that race. But let me give you this bold prediction. Every political analyst in the country has.
Oh, you're making a bold prediction on bold like a. I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
Yeah, I did that on purpose. But no, look. So every like Cook Political Report, Saboteurs Crystal Ball, they have that Senate seat rated a solid D or likely D.
Solid D? That should be censored now that Alex Jones is banned. But what? Wait, you're saying the governor's race or the Senate race?
The Senate. The governor is rated as a toss-up, which I don't buy because Rick Snyder is so unpopular. People are fed up with Republican leadership in Michigan as the governor. See, and Bill Chouette is pretty polarizing. But with the Senate,
but why is he polarizing? Before you get to the Senate,
he's endorsed by Trump and was seen as more of the hardliner. So, like, he may get more of the base to vote for him, which may help. But if you look at the polls, the lieutenant governor, I think his name was Brian Calley, he was polling kind of even with Gretchen, but Suede was like he was polling kind of behind.
Yeah,
I would have
I
voted.
kind of think these polling people are basically stroking each other's polls nowadays because they don't really, they'll put out these polls, for example, with Ted Cruz like losing ground in Texas, and it's like
No, that's
I don't
stupid.
believe a minute that anybody in Texas wants to vote for that dude that's
For a
trying
dude
to
who wants to impeach Trump,
what.
for a dude who wants to impeach Trump, pretty much.
Well, Ted Cruz is somebody who I think that they were saying during the election that Trump would beat him in the primary, and he did pretty well. And I'm not a huge fan of Ted Cruz on many issues. I think he is a pretty smart guy, but
I like him.
he is. I mean, he's a very intelligent person. I think if there were to be debates, the other guy, this Beto O'Rourke, would be. I don't know much about him, but it's pretty hard to beat Ted Cruz in a debate, and that would affect the polling. So a lot of this polling is meaningless when you have
Yeah.
somebody who can be a good debater in the polls, um,
Well,
in the primary. I mean, or
let
in
me
the
tell you
general
what's a
election.
great benchmark to use. You can use this in Michigan. You can use this in Texas. Anyone who's watching can use this if they really want to predict a race. Look at turnout from both parties, like how many people voted in the primary. I did that with Michigan last night. I'll explain that here in a second. But with Texas, all I heard in the news was how record turnout among Democrats and all this crap. And I'm just like, did you look at the Republicans' numbers? The Republicans had more people vote in their primary than ever before. And they're voting to elect incumbents that are for sure going to win their nomination. Like they were voting for Cruz and Abbott out of solidarity. It wasn't even to like because somebody was challenging them and they wanted them to keep their jobs. The Democrats had contested primaries for both governor and Senate, and Republicans way outvoted them by a few 100,000 votes. It was quite a bit. So this, I like that shows popularity among the base with both of them. And when you got the base energized, they don't stand a chance in Texas. I mean, if you're in like what a swing state or a blue state with a Republican, yeah, that you need the Republican base and some moderates. But like in Texas, if their Republican base is energized like that, they don't stand a chance. And then with Michigan, though, this was where I also predict victory for Gretchen, even though I don't really like her that much. Um, I was looking at the numbers in 2010 and 2014, and both of those years, the Republican primary turnout beat the Democrats. But this time, Democratic turnout was up by, they beat the Republicans by about 100,000 votes. I think they were up 300,000 votes from 2014.
What
So
what
it's
what state was that?
Michigan.
So
And
The Democrats did outpoll the Republicans there in the
yeah,
primary.
and both had contested primaries.
Uh
But
huh.
let me, again, back to the Senate. I do want to make this prediction. I'm not saying John James is going to win. He's a very solid candidate. He's a war veteran. He is a businessman, and he's black, a black Republican. And the biggest Democratic voting base in Michigan are black people that live in Detroit. Trump won Michigan, and he won 6% of the black vote, according to the exit polls. Now, if John James can gets the share of the black vote to even 12%, and then the rest of the vote is kind of like Trumpy, like it's like swing. That can make all the difference in the world because keep in mind, Trump won Michigan by 12,000 votes, and if he had won 12% of the black vote instead of six, he would have killed it in Michigan. He wouldn't have even been close. And the reason I doubled it is because I looked at the numbers in South Carolina. According to their exit polls, Trump won the 4% of the black vote in South Carolina. And in when it came to their Senate race, Tim Scott was up for re-election too in 2016. And I looked at his numbers, and he won 8%. So he won twice what Trump did. Scott was also running against a black guy, so that might have made a difference. But I'm just saying, if someone like John James He sends this pro-business, pro-America and message, which he's trying to do, and he's touting his service to his country and saying, "I'm not a career politician like Debbie Stabden now, who has been here since 2001." Then that might play well, and by getting even a few black voters there that would normally vote Democrat, John James might is really cutting into the Democratic base, and I think Republicans should go for the win in Michigan because they can do it. And John James is a very solid country. He's an awesome a candidate, and he's an awesome patriot. I really liked him. I was really glad he won his party.
Mr. Wazo asked, "Who is this guy Bold is talking to?" So Larry, thank you for answering. He says some weirdo. It says Freighter Watcher. She says, "I'm in the front lines in Michigan. The pulse of the people is going to shock the polls. People are fed up and done with the identity politics of the Democratic and the crazy hysteria." Can I ask Freight Watcher what county she lives in? There are a number of Michigan. Even though I am an Ohio State fan, sorry to tell you, ma'am, but Michigan is a very interesting state because you do have a lot of very powerful college campuses there, like Michigan State over in, I think it's Ingham County. I don't remember which county Ann Arbor is in.
Ann Arbor is Washtenaw County. It's west of Detroit.
Right. So those I always like watching. Like I'm not as much of an obsessive person as Alex is on some of these elections, but
I like data.
Right. So I do like these maps, and you can see here this political map, and you can see Abdul Said, and I thought that was a very interesting election, but he still got his ass whooped, partially because of what Alex said, that there was another progressive candidate that split the vote, and in Wayne County he won a third of the vote. Mm-hmm. Over here in Washtenaw he almost won Washtenaw County.
Yeah, he was leading for much of the night, and then in the end he lost.
Freight Watcher says she's from Wayne County in Michigan and is going Democratic.
Wayne County will go Democrat. The question
is that's Detroit, but I'm asking where she lives. That was my question. If she doesn't mind answering, of course some people don't want people to know where they live. In any case, so this guy, you're saying John James here had a little more difficult of a time. Now he did have, there were 900,000 voters in that primary, whereas in the governor's race, it appears there were about 1 million on the Democratic side, and I would say 800,000 on the Republican side.
What were the numbers for the Senate for both sides?
Well, Debbie Stabenow didn't have an opponent.
I know, but she still had votes. I'm curious how many.
It doesn't have it.
Oh, it doesn't. And to address that thing, people are fed up with identity politics. That's true. But inevitably, there are a few people that play them. And inevitably, they're like black people. There are some who back black candidates simply because of that. And like it or hate it, that's what they do. So, I'm looking at that. But John James isn't playing that type of message. He's not going out and saying, "I'm black, vote for me." He has a very unifying message, and they even asked him about it. He said, "I'm not sending a message to blacks or to white people. I'm sending a message to people in Michigan that this is what we need to do," and he's pushing his platform. He's not playing the identity politics. The identity politics will play themselves out by voters who make their minds up.
So Larry says that you sound like somebody who he served with in the Navy who could fart at will. Are you able to do that?
No, I can't.
Well, we can always hope one of our other guests will be able to do it.
Is he the guy that called me weird?
What? No, that was actually, yeah, he was. Yeah, Larry's one of our preferred people. Larry is. I'll tell you what. Mm-hmm. The reason I like what he brings to the comment section is because we both came from the same stream, Lionel Nation, and I'm one of the people who kept saying that Caleb Maupin must be deported to Cuba or drowned in the Caribbean somewhere. And he kept Caleb Maupin is this communist who is on RT. And then Larry, every time he'd be like, "No, you can't do that. Maupin's the greatest." I'm like, "What the fuck?" But eventually he's like, "Yeah, I'll check out your channel." I'm like, "Oh, that's nice." and he
So he's a
did.
communist.
Well, I said yeah. I call him a Maoist, but he says he's a meowist or something because he has cats. I think that's what he said.
There's one
But
more race I want to address, though, and I want to ask you about it, too, because I know you're very pro-liberty and stuff. What did you think of Missouri? Austin Peters.
um, well, I really didn't know that the other guy was as strong as he turned out to be. So, and Peterson, I guess he came in third place. So
Yeah.
I'm wondering how there was another candidate that was actually ahead of him.
Who was the second candidate? Was it Tony Monetti?
Yep.
Okay, so Tony Monetti had a little bit of support. Sebastian Gorka was campaigning for him, from what I understood. But Josh Hawley, and this is what I would say to liberty-minded people. If I lived in Missouri, I would have voted for Hawley. I like him a lot. He was a clerk for Justice John Roberts, and besides getting the Obamacare vote wrong, John Roberts has been a pretty originalist, constitutionalist judge. So I have a lot of respect for that.
Yeah, but
And
besides, yeah, okaying the worst piece of domestic legislation in U.S. history, you're saying he's a
no, he
great.
got the Obamacare, and he voted. He didn't want the court to overturn Obamacare. It wasn't because he agreed with it. That was the reasoning behind it. And I thought that was dumb. And not everyone's perfect. But other than that, Roberts has been an outstanding jurist, I think. And the fact that Holly clerked for him says is pretty cool. Like that, it's not easy to clerk for a Supreme Court justice. And he has a law degree from Yale. The guy loves the Constitution as much as Peterson does, even though Peterson had all this hype. That's my theory.
Yeah, it's kind of here Kent County. So Kent County is up in
And
that's the Grand Rapids area. So yeah, Abdullah Syed won 41% there. So
he won.
people want to think that these candidates because they're Muslim can't succeed, but I think that they can. I think that
No,
what'd you say?
Michigan has a history of those guys, actually. They had a Republican senator. I'm not sure if he was Muslim or not, but he was Arab, and his name was Spencer Abraham. He had Debbie Stabenow's seat before she got it.
Right, but this guy would be even more of a see. There are a lot of what do they call them? Lebanese Maronite Christians in Michigan as well. So that's not the same thing. This
Detroit
guy,
has a huge Muslim community, huge one. Like you don't hear about it much, but it's there. It's big.
right? So this guy, I mean, you have to look. I wouldn't have voted for him, but I guess congratulations for doing as well as he did,
Mm-hmm.
because Michigan, like I'm arguing with a lot of these centrist Democrats lately, and they're like, no, the Democratic Party needs to maintain, they can't let the progressives take over. I'm like, fuck that. It's better for them to stand for something than for like literally nothing, which is what they do now. And
Yeah, you're right. Um, You're so right about that. And that's the other reason why I'm saying there won't be a blue wave. Literally, the only thing Democrats talk about, besides abolishing ICE from a few of the left wing members, is that they're going to resist Trump. We know nothing about anything else they believe in. We just know that they oppose Donald Trump. Is that a good message?
no, I think you're pretty accurate on that. Um, so besides those races, so there was Michigan, and then there was what are the other ones? Kansas and
That one.
Washington State. So Washington
Yeah,
State, there was this. There's a primary, and they have the same bullshit system they have in California, which I think is the dumbest thing in the
I
world,
like
right?
it, honestly. I honestly like it.
The open primaries.
Yeah, because there's a guy running in my at Chattanooga this past time. His name was Dennis. He's a really good friend of mine, and he's a conservative Democrat. Um, he's running though, like he was pro life and like pro business, like pro low taxes. Like he's basically a Democrat in name. That's about it. And I was looking at him, and like I wanted to vote in the Republican primary for governor. We just elected a conservative outsider to represent us as governor, uh, who had never held public office against a career politician and a career politician in the making. This guy was a true conservative outsider, and we just elected him to be our nominee. And I wanted to vote for this guy and for Dennis Clark in downtown Chattanooga. So I'm sitting there like, crap, I can only pull it a Republican ballot or a Democratic one. If we did it the way Washington and California did, I would have been able to vote for both of them. So that's just my take on it.
So then, yeah, that's about it. That's it for Washington State. There were a number of progressive challengers in. Actually, there were some districts where there was only one nominee from both parties. But
how much of the vote is in? Do you have the results in front of you?
What do you mean in
Washington?
Yeah, some of them have only like 77%. It's like
they vote by mail, so it takes them a few days to count the ballots.
Oh, they vote by. There's actually a funny movie with Chris Farley called Black Sheep.
It's almost entirely by mail voting. They do the same in California. It takes forever.
So Gerke says, how about Dianne Feinstein of the Senate? Get this, Intelligence Committee. How about a 3-word, 2-level oxymoron? Chi-Com spy. Yeah, she had a Chinese communist spy on her staff. That's pretty funny.
But Russia.
Good for her.
And I love Dianne Feinstein. She's a special kind of stupid. She's sitting there complaining every single day about these Kavanaugh documents, when literally the entire she decided over a month ago that she was going to oppose Brett Kavanaugh or whoever Trump picks for the Supreme Court. And now she's sitting there talking about how she wants the documents. Why do you even want the documents? We know how you're going to vote, and you know how you're going to vote. What's the point? I think Kamala Harris was doing the same thing, and Tom Cotton tweeted to her and said that to her, if I'm not mistaken.
Wait, what'd you say that she was complaining, and then what?
They're all complaining about the Kavanaugh documents, and Chuck Grassley put a limit as to which documents they can get. He says, you can pull so many documents, and that's it. Then we're going to have a vote. He's the Judiciary Committee chairman. And these guys are all losing their minds about, like, oh, we're not getting enough documents. I was like, oh, all of y'all already said you're going to vote against the nominee, no matter who it is. So why are you even making a big deal about this?
Right. I mean, the Supreme Court already, I think I'm even tired of, I think it's like ridiculous that people are even talking about it. Like, I don't think that Brett Kavanaugh, like, because I think he's a police state supporter, like, you know, people know what they need to know about him. So, you know, people have, even Rand Paul decided he's going to vote for him, which I think is, you know, it's basically him ensuring that the Trump people don't go after him. I don't think he was really convinced that Kavanaugh is that great of a candidate. But the Democrats have basically made it like no Republican would vote against Kavanaugh because these idiots are basically making him seem like he's basically Jason from the Friday the 13th movies. It's just
literally.
No. I mean, I don't like the guy at all, but or I wouldn't say I don't like him at all. But there's certain things I think are red flags for me. But I'm not gonna just assassinate the guy's character because. You know, he's a police state guy because, you know, obviously you would then have me literally assassinated character and physically because
look, I don't think Kavanaugh is great, and I don't think he's awful. I think I was surprised Trump didn't go for Amy Coney Barrett. Honestly, I was surprised, but I think he picked Kavanaugh because he's like, I know I can get this guy confirmed, and that's what it ended up being. And if I can compare him to another, it would probably be John Roberts. He's going to be mostly an originalist that puts some emphasis on precedent. That's what I think is going to happen.
Well, Anthony Kennedy, I think Clay Travis, who's on the radio, he's a Fox Sports guy on the radio. By the way, I think he is from Nashville.
Yeah, they were talking about him running for Senate in Tennessee. He's not, but he was thought of as a potential candidate.
Well, it would have been, I mean, I think he's probably having enough fun as is making money, but he said that something that was very interesting. He said, like, Kennedy was one of the better justices, which means that like there's a lot of decisions that make a lot of sense to him, and then there's other ones that he completely disagrees with, but still make a little sense. So maybe I guess Kavanaugh's an appropriate replacement. This was a seat in District 9 that was also that in Washington State, where the Young Turks, they were promoting this Sarah Smith candidate, and she came in third after the GOP and Democratic. I mean, I guess there's some precincts still not reporting, but she doesn't advance. I mean, let's say she does advance and she'd be running against another Democrat. That would be kind of funny because it's the same thing. It's ridiculous. These Young Turks candidates just seem to basically get knocked out, and then they never mention them again. And then the one person they do mention is, of course, the one that succeeded. What's her name? Ocasio-Cortez, who, everybody either thinks that she's
17,000 votes in a majority Latino district.
Well, I think like people have to gain some perspective. I mean, she's not the worst thing that ever happened, and she's not like she's not Joan of Arc. Like these progressives are behaving like she's basically slayed the dragon that caused the housing crisis or something.
She's pretty stupid.
Yeah, she's not. I mean, I'd say that she has the potential one day to be like a leader, but today she is not a leader. She's kind of like just this person that's really impressionable to other people, and I saw especially on that interview that they made fun of her for on PBS. She had there were a couple of people focused on the Israel thing that she did, which was kind of hilarious because immediately Palestinian activists started jumping on her and saying, you should have said they fucking don't deserve to exist or something. But then the other thing that I think she flubbed on was, she said that the reason unemployment is down is because people are working two jobs or more. And that has nothing to do. Right. That was like people immediately caught on that. They're like, wait, but you're supposed to have a degree in economics and you said this. So, it's like maybe if she were really like, I think that she has the enthusiasm, but she doesn't have the mind to match it. And I'm trying to be fair here. I'm not trying to be, obviously people are making fun of her looks, which I think is always on the table for anybody.
No, she's pretty. I'll give you that.
Yeah, I think she is pretty, but people. I mean, of course, there's people who will. I mean, I remember when they were making fun of Sarah Palin. I was like, okay, so this is on the table now. We can make fun of candidates' looks.
But no, she has the IQ of Sarah Palin.
It could be even dumber than Sarah Palin.
Yeah. But Sarah, let me ask you this: you mentioned her comments about Israel, but you're a Jew, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about the rising anti-Semitism in the Democratic Party? Does it concern you, or do you even think about it? Or?
So that's something I've actually I wrote an article about in the Times of Israel blogs, and it's actually gotten a bit of coverage. I'll pull it over to the tab. I don't think you can. Can you see anything on my screen, or do you have the?
I can. Send it to me or post it in the video link or something.
Yeah, I'll send it to you. So I'll put it here. I'll put it in the chat. So it's gotten a bit of coverage because I've been trying to share it with a bunch of people. So look, I look at it this way. Okay, I'm not judging people if they take one side or the other because that's not the intent of the article. But a lot of these Jewish Democrats who are lifelong Democrats, they will say, well, we have to keep influence within the Democratic Party in order for when the Democrats come back to power, they won't basically take a huge dump on Israel or something. And I'm like, that's a pathetic way to vote because for decades, I mean, my dad is a huge Democrat, and he said, they give a lot of foreign aid or whatever. I'm like, foreign aid, they've also forced a lot of concessions in terms of the whole, the Oslo process, if you know what that is. and everything, and withdrawing from Gaza or whatever. So,
And Iran, like, does that Iran deal not bother you?
are you asking me personally, or are you asking in general?
No, I'm asking you personally. Like Dennis Prager, I know you hated when I referenced his videos, but I watched his video about the Iran deal, and he sounded like a guy pleading for his people, literally.
Well, Dennis Prager, I think, is more emotionally involved than I am, but I think a lot of what he says is accurate. Now, I think some people overhype what's happening with Iran and the nuclear program. There are other aspects of what's happening with Iran that are, for example, they have a lot of terror influence over in South America that people don't pay attention to at all. So I'm kind of like, just like with other issues, I kind of float in a different area than everybody else. So yeah, I think with the Democratic Party, I don't care about anti-Semitism because people have said everything and anything about me. So
Mm.
so you're not talking about the average person here. But yeah, there's a lot of people that are concerned about it, and they're just taking the wrong approach, especially these quote unquote progressive or liberal Jews that they think, oh, we can continue to contribute to the party, and it's better than leaving the party, and then eventually they'll completely fall to anti-Semitism. I'm like, well, look, the people who are taking over the Democratic Party, they have a legitimate gripe because it's been corrupt for decades. And they also
Mhm.
happen to be, those same people happen to be pro-Palestinian. But what are you
Mhm.
supposed to do? The Democratic Party's establishment, which is embodied by people like Dershowitz, Alan Dershowitz, who's a is a brilliant criminal defense lawyer, but it's
Mhm.
embodied by people like him. What's that?
Isn't he a professor at Harvard or something?
Yeah, he's a Harvard law professor, and
Okay, that's where I've seen him. I've read some of his stuff.
he was OJ's lawyer, and so there's people like him, and there's people like Chuck Schumer and Joseph Lieberman who are like prominent liberal Jews, and I say, those people, stop listening to them. They are the failure of the Democratic Party, and it's not just with this issue. With every issue, they're the reason that it's failed because they've always proposed these positions that don't mean anything. Bernie Sanders, who is a piece of crap, at least has a belief system that he adheres to with all the, he is anti-war typically. He
Mhm.
is for universal health care. He is for the welfare state. These
And
are
he's
all
consistently done it.
he's more consistent than them. Like there are things like he has supported the defense contractors at times and whatever, but
Mhm.
you know that is something to believe in. And I'm not endorsing what he believes in. I'm just saying that it is something. It is literally like it's a difference between having a lunchbox full of lunch and having a lunchbox with some rocks in it. That's
No,
the
I see what you're saying, and him and Hillary is a perfect contrast. You saw Hillary flip a lot of her positions to win his voters in 2016, and it's like his voter. I was a Bernie Sanders fan at the time, so I'm sitting here looking at Hillary, and I'm just like, "You're so full of crap. I don't believe anything you're saying." And with Bernie, like you could tell he was passionate about what he believed in. So,
1 second. I was just putting this in the thing for Larry. Um, So yeah, I think that like if to answer your question again, because I know I kind of went a little off the deep end on it, and I might have trailed off. The thing is, if you want something good for a country, whatever country it is, whether it's I mean you're obviously Greek American, right? You wouldn't
mm,
want Greece to be entirely dependent on another country, let's say on Germany, as it happens to be. And that's the approach I take to Israel. And by the way, I think Palestinians, if they want something better for their country, they would want their leadership to be independent and of course transparent, which it isn't, right?
mhm.
So that's really an issue for politics in every country. You of course you want good relations with other countries. I think it's a good thing for. I mean, our president believes in actually, improving ties with countries that we have had poor ties with for years. With going to China, by the way, I think it's a good thing that at least he does have discussions with China, which is a country I'm very critical of.
Mhm.
Okay, so I respect that with Donald Trump, and I didn't respect the leader that was in Israel when I was living there. Ehud Olmert, who was basically he was a buffoon, and he was basically the type of person who was respectable in public but was incompetent in real life. It's the same idea with Barack Obama. So what I think is what's going to happen is the Democrats are going to nominate somebody of the style, the Cory Booker style or Kirsten Gillibrand, that they're very, very good at presentation, but there's really nothing behind it.
I think Kamala Harris will be the next Democratic nominee.
Yeah, exactly. What Mr. Wazo says, I never knew Bold was a Jew until I saw him in profile. Oh, shots fired. Shots fired. You mean this? Because of this? Is that why? But, yeah, what were you saying?
Yeah, I really foresee Kamala Harris as the next nominee. I think, though, back to what we were saying about the Supreme Court and the red wave, the Supreme Court will be the Republicans' ticket to that. Stop trying to paint, stop attacking the Democrats, just make it clear that the Supreme Court is going to be the biggest thing. And if you're a Democrat, and you don't want a red wave to happen, or you actually want to see a blue wave, don't spend your time bashing Israel like AOC is doing. Don't spend your time obsessing over Russia, because literally nobody cares, despite what the media talks about.
Look, I think I'll have to disagree with you with Ocasio-Cortez. She did say negative things about Israel, but that wasn't like the feature of her campaign. She said a number of things, and then she was asked about them. And I think it's okay for me. But by the way, I could tell you there's another candidate who she won. You think Ocasio-Cortez is the issue? There's another candidate who won a nomination in Michigan. Her name is Rashida Tlaib, who is Palestinian.
Yeah, John Conyers' nephew goes for that seat.
So she is going to be in Congress. So what do you want? It's happening. It's time to face the music. So a lot of these people who say, it's important because the Democrats they're traditionally, yes, the Democrats have a lot of Jewish voters, but it hasn't helped. It hasn't helped, first of all, because it's been a failed policy of dependence between the two countries. And it hasn't helped because I think you could probably relate, and I'm not trolling here. On a spiritual level, the Jewish Democrats are a complete failure. A lot of the people who are the youth, who are Jewish progressives, don't identify with religion at all. They don't believe in religion. They see religion as kind of this superstitious nonsense. So it's a complete failure on a social and cultural level. And then they want to talk about how important it is to vote for this party. It's like, this is where you've gotten us. So I personally, I find, I'd rather, just like I'd rather have my own opinions on religion, I'd rather have my own opinion on politics. So I'm not going to commit I'm certainly not going to commit to the Democratic Party. So that is for sure. And the Republicans also, I have a real problem with sometimes. They just, they just say one thing. They talk about lowering taxes and closing the deficit, and then they don't do it. So
that's my opinion. Deficit ever, literally ever. It's crazy. But I also think Trump is doing something in this party, and he's getting rid of these guys, and he's forcing them to keep their promises or leave. And that's why you're seeing a bunch of them retire, and you're seeing a bunch more get primary and get their butts kicked. So.
Okay. So I think we'll try to close it up. Pinochet just checked in. I don't know why he came now, because we're about to wrap up. Anyway, so Alex, besides the elections, what do you have planned? Aren't you going back to school or something soon?
Yep, I start not this Monday, but the next. I'm trying to finish a couple of books before then. One is this one here. It's about the guy, the outsider that won our governor's primary. he wrote a book about it. He's a really strong Christian guy, and it's about his life story. His wife died when in 2000. She got thrown off a horse, and he got remarried and as $1 million businessman. It's a really cool story. And then I'm reading this one as well, and it's Clarence Thomas's autobiography. He's become my favorite person on the Supreme Court. I've just been reading his legal analyses, and I love how he loves America and how he loves the Constitution. So I want to get those books done before school starts.
Okay, in school, are you taking any of these courses? This one is United Kingdom to Hogwarts, Harry, an intensive study of Harry Potter through the British Isles.
No.
Okay, what about this one? Wasting time on the internet.
No.
Hashtag selfie class. Are you taking that one?
No. Where are you finding this?
It's from Time Magazine. Learning from YouTube.
No.
Politicizing Beyonce.
I think I may have taken. No, I'm joking. No.
What's this other one? California, Here We Come, the OC, and oh my God, I can't even believe that one.
What is it?
It's based on, you remember that soap opera from the CW, the OC, that was about Orange County? It's like, what?
Oh, God.
They made a college course based on that? Are you serious? That Misha Barton was hot as hell, though. She was like, I mean, she
what
could.
What kind of classes are these days? I have a stack of books that's over a foot tall if you stack them. And I have to read them. I'm taking healthcare economics, urban economics. I'm taking a finance class, taking intermediate, micro, crazy stuff.
What about the sociology of Miley Cyrus? You taking that one?
No. I'd like to take a sociology class taught by Maxine Waters, though. She's a sociology major.
The Art of Walking.
And roll her.
Then there's the physics of Star Trek. That actually would not be. I mean, I've seen books about that, but it's kind of bullshit. Jay-Z and Kanye West. That's a class over at University of Missouri at Columbia. Wordplay. Wow. A ride plod from Babel to Scrabble. That actually would be. I mean, I don't know if you should have a